Welcome to the Private Equity Experience Podcast, your backstage pass to the strategies, stories, and secrets that drive value in the PE universe. No filters, no fluff, just straight talk and expert insights to help you navigate the private equity world with confidence. And now your hosts, Ed Barton, Rory Liebhart, and Emily Sander.
To be honest, people often ask me, hey, where did you think of the book idea? And how is it like to write a book? What is that process like? So I think this is a salient topic for people.
Yeah.
But
Well, and we're coming up on the 1 year mark of releasing the book, and basically 2 years since we started the concept.
That's
Really,
crazy.
right? Time has truly flown, and it's not just because I'm getting older, but
Yeah.
it is actually happening.
It's I do remember the moment I was talking to Ed. I was right across from him, and literally, I don't use this word lightly, but it was like an epiphany. It was like,
Yeah.
you, me and Rory should write a book about private equity. I literally just blurted it out like that. And Ed was like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's call Big Rigs right now and see if he's in. And I was like, I'm going to call him. So,
well,
that was
it's so funny because every time, and I had this conversation with a colleague last week over lunch who recently bought the book, and they too are interested in writing a book, and they're asking me, what it's like to write a book and why I did it. And I said, well, first and foremost, I have a really good couple of co-authors that basically cajoled me into it, because I certainly wouldn't have done it myself, and kind of put Emily up on that top of that pyramid in that respect, because there's no way I would have just decided to put what is in my head onto paper, proverbially. It just wouldn't have happened. I just not in the habit of putting myself out there that way. But yeah, power of persuasion.
Rory,
for
want to do
sure.
this? Yeah. No, that sounds cool.
Didn't take much arm twisting.
Yeah.
I mean, with you, with the two of you, for sure. But definitely not something I would have initiated on my own. I don't think it would have been as meaningful if it was just one of us doing it, right? I think all three voices come through, and I think we all have unique perspectives, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that we all were aligned on, we've been through this, but when we talk about it to other people, private equity, their eyes start to glaze over. They start to be very scared of it. It's this big scary thing that happens to other people. And I'm I am kind of interested, and I would love to be more savvy on that, but I'm just not. So we wanted to make it accessible for those types of readers and listeners for our audiobook. And also, we have all known multiple founders who are like, you should have read this book before you jumped in because you clunked your head on the bottom there and then shattered it open in front of everyone.
Yeah.
But we each had, set people, I won't name names on my end, but who needed to hear this, not just, to be trite or quippy about it. They would have found this useful and may have made a different decision going in, or just may have handled the process differently throughout. So that was kind of the impetus for the book.
Yeah. And it's been interesting, even once the book's been out and consumed by folks out there, what they take from it. Because sometimes I'll have folks that are, they've been around and they are pretty savvy business people, a lot of experience, and they still pull nuggets of insight that, I wouldn't have personally expected. I would have been, to me, with some people, I'm a little bit concerned this is remedial knowledge to them, but it's almost even if it is, people like to be validated in their thinking. I had that comment last week actually in a separate meeting, was it's validating, and this is a person that's been doing M&A work for 30 years, so it's interesting. It's been fun. I mean, I guess that's what it comes down to, is we did it because we wanted to work together on something. There's kind of a void in the market from that perspective, but ultimately, we weren't going to do it unless it was fun.
Well, that's the other thing.
Certainly turned out to be fun.
Yeah, we all were this is going to be fun. This is just going to be a fun project.
We definitely didn't go into it with commercial endeavors as the number one priority, because it certainly hasn't hit New York Times bestseller yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
But no, it was a super fun project. And had you asked me 5 years ago, Emily, would you be big into podcast? I'm not podcast. You want me to get in front of a camera and talk into a microphone? No. And now I host too, which is crazy.
Yes.
And I get to see you guys, every time we record, which is awesome. And we were like, let's do the podcast because maybe we should let folks in on our little tradition. But we have a tradition where, so this tradition started, so we go to the Keg, which is a restaurant, a steakhouse in the Seattle, like Pacific Northwest area. And this tradition started because after our quarterly board meetings, the entire executive team would go to the Keg and some of us would get smashed. Some of us, myself, like speaking for myself, would just eat a crap ton of nachos and the really good
Oh man,
bread they had
I think I did
at the
both.
steakhouse. I was like, I'm having carbs today, like, and I don't
Mashed
care.
and
And some other
nachos.
people get
Yes.
totally sloshed. Um,
Yeah.
but we would do that every quarter. And then
Yeah.
us three just continued that. Every once in a while, we just like, let's
Yeah.
just go to the Keg after we left
Yeah.
G2. We just have kept
Exactly.
that tradition
Yeah.
up. So we were
Yep.
like, let's go to the Keg, talk this through, and like a podcast came out of it.
Yeah. I was really pleasantly surprised at how, to use this term, organically it kind of came to life, meaning we all have different voices, but they sort of melded together in the message we're trying to create. And the way I talk about it with people that maybe can't even discern what it's about, I'm like, look, this is a primer book, and this is a sort of an unvarnished end to end look at what it's like to be involved with private equity from various perspectives. And people first ask the question, so are you just tearing private equity apart, or is this just like a
No.
indictment on the sharks out there that are private equity? Not at all. It's really, we just tell it for what it is at the end of the day. And some of those things, founders might find interesting to know. On the other side, private equity folks that work in that space specifically, they might also find, hey, this is folks that have been on executive management teams. This is how they think. Maybe I can learn a little bit from that. And so, it's a balanced approach, I guess, really, but there's no agenda there. I guess that's the main point, is we don't have like a message we're trying to drive home about, one position or other in the market. It's just like, this is what it is. This is what to expect. This is what to watch out for. This is where the rewards are and how people make money in this world.
Yeah, I was going to say the message that we're trying to drive home is kind of know your partner and be prepared for the change.
Yeah.
And I've made a career
Exactly.
out of founders who did not do that. And so that's really what precipitated, I think, the first call, as I was commiserating with Emily about kind of one of the situations I was in. And I was like, they're basically, they've lost control of their business. They don't understand what they need to do differently.
Yeah.
And this is going to end poorly, which it did. And, you just can see the train wreck coming a mile away. And I think that's been the element here that I think makes me feel really good about it is, if we help 2 or 3 folks,
that's it. Yeah.
Who are like, okay, now I'm going into this eyes wide open, because the private equity folks, again, they do this every day and they do it dozens of times a year, generally on transactions. They know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And they also know how to make that investment really sing. And they generally do well on their investments, or at least they tend not to lose on investments at the private equity level. So there's a lot to be learned, but it's a massive change. And that's the part that I'm like, look, if we can help a couple founders not end up having me show up at their doorstep and go, hi, I'm from the fund and I'm here to help. That would be a godsend for them, not for me or my pocketbook, but for them, it would be.
I think just getting good information out to people. That was, here's our stories, which I think covered a lot of ground, but take it for whatever it's worth to you. But there was not a lot of good information. I felt like there's a lot of like razzle dazzle and hey, here's PE and da da da. And there's like, oh my gosh, like vulture capital and all this stuff. But there's a lot of in between, and it is here's some accurate information from our experience that, again, you can take it and use it how you want. And private equity isn't bad unless you get yourself in a bad situation with private equity. It is what it is, and you can use it to your advantage. You can partner with in a certain way. You can know what you're getting into, and just like for the next, few years, here's what it's going to be. But I think if people's expectation is way over here, and then it's like torquing them this way, it's like, hey, I'm gonna take a vacation in Hawaii and lounge by the pool and you end up in like Anchorage, Alaska on a hike. Not a bad scenario, but if you weren't expecting that, it can be jarring. So I think we're just
Right.
getting people information.
Yeah. And it's a whole journey too. That's why we titled the book On Ramp to Exit, your complete guide to the private equity experience. And the reason for that is if you're a founder, you're selling your business for the first time, you know, you can't think about it as only that one transaction where you're selling, you know, most of your share in your company. It's, you know, you go through the phases of multiple iterations of growth, of profitability and things like that to then eventually sell the business again. That is the end goal and always will be under the private equity model. So that's why, you know, we wanted to provide something that was just less about the anatomy of a single deal where you're selling your company. No, it's like what happens on the other side of when you sell your company for the first time, and then you become integrated as part of a management team to grow the business and make it more profitable to then sell again in the future to, you know, another private equity group, a strategic, you know, you name it. And so it is really meant to be, and this is encapsulated in just 100 pages too. So it's a really easy read. It's a plain read, you know, it's a good plain read for folks is, you know, everything you need to know from a baseline perspective that you can save thousands of dollars on by talking to an attorney that might speak down to you because you're going to ask what you think are dumb questions when they're really not. And so it just gets that stuff out of the way and maybe saves you a little bit of time and effort up front to know what you're getting into, you know, from a, you know, a high level perspective, but tangible, you know, there's tangible case studies in there that, you know, we've gone through, we've got the battle scars to prove it, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And that's something else we set out to do. I remember a conversation around, we want someone to be able to pick this up on a plane ride
yeah,
and, you know, read it and then get something really valuable out of it, but they're not sitting down for like an 800-page dissertation on private equity
no,
funds and
not at all.
methodologies and things like
Yeah.
that. We didn't want it to be academic.
Yeah.
And I think it does that. And it's kind of like you mentioned primer, and it's kind of like when you're building a house and there's the wooden beams and then the, you know, contractors who come in and fill out the walls and things like that. So you have like the structure, the framework. And so, you know,
Yeah.
okay, when people talk about this kind of stuff, it's kind of in the living room. They're talking about the living room. And then when they're talking about that kind of stuff, that's towards the end of the first phase. That's kind of like in the kitchen type of thing. So you have
Mhm.
reference points, so you can see the whole thing. And then we're like, okay, but there's far more information to fill out. But you kind of have to talk that through with someone, and we're like, oh, the podcast. We can talk through the particulars and the details and the different
Yeah.
scenarios that we've been through and are still going through right now, and like news stories that pop up, and we can do that real time. And so that's kind of
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
part of the podcast
Have,
and book.
have you all had anybody in your life that you felt like was the most unlikely person to have picked up the book and read it and then said, boy, I learned a lot? I have a couple of those in my life. I think, you know, obviously family and friends are like, oh, I'm interested in what they've been working on. So it's like folks that are completely even out of the business world are like, I'm interested in this and pick it up. And then they're like, yeah, I learned something here. And I've been hearing all about this concept forever, and now I understand what you're talking about and like what you do for a living. Because even having a conversation with my wife, sometimes she sometimes has no idea what I actually do. But yeah, like it's funny to sort of give people a glimpse into that world. You know,
I remember
just
you
interested
sent
from
on
that
Instagram,
standpoint.
like your cousin sent a picture of like, I guess your little
Yes.
cousin, your little second cousin,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
was like what, like 5 or 6, and like
Yeah. Yeah.
leaning back
That's
in
a
a chair.
prime example.
That
Yeah.
was awesome. That's the one
That
that
made my
stuck
week.
in my
Yeah,
mind.
definitely.
No, what I would say, Rory, is I have not had anyone come up to me and go, hey, you know, that I was just shocked by that said, hey, I've read your book, and
Yeah.
what I have had are folks who I wasn't shocked by read the book and go, I wish I read the book before.
Oh, wow. That's
So
awesome.
I've had two folks go, I wish I had read this book before. And one was a founder and the other one was on a management team in a private
Nice.
equity. And this is their second time around. So they had kind of gotten immersed in it the first time, and it was not a positive experience. So that second time, they're like, you know, I would have done much better had I read this, and this is helping now.
Yeah.
But you know, I would say I haven't had that surprised experience or having my 5-year-old second cousin read the book. Or if they are, I'm not aware of it. But yeah, it's the piece that I think is going to be most interesting is as we look back, and continue to do the podcast and start to bring in, some of the elements, and I think if folks are listening, if you're having some of this experience, reach out to one of the three of us,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
we may want to pull you onto the podcast to have a chat.
Yeah.
We could do this as like a counseling session even. But the opportunity is going to be interesting 20 years from now or 15 years from now to see if we touched, 3 or 4 folks or more that really avoided kind of tripping and breaking their ankle or something on the private equity transaction because they were a little bit better armed going into it and knew what to expect. Again, I don't think you're going to get a different structure on a transaction. I think you're going to get a eyes wide open. This is what I'm going into, and I'm kind of ready to take that step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only person I remember giving feedback was actually coming at it from the different direction, which was my dad, and he was like, "Oh, it's a good reminder that people know so little because he's so ingratiated in that. What he's like pension fund LP. He's like part of the people who fund the PE firm, so he's like all in
Okay,
that
yeah.
ecosystem. So he's like,
Yeah.
yeah, doesn't everyone? I'm like, no, Dad. Like people don't know. He's like, oh, okay, then this is a good book for them. I'm like, yeah. So
Well, that's true. That's a good point. And that's one thing that I really sometimes lose touch with is things like this that are just kind of second nature after 20, almost 25 years in this world. To me, isn't to everyone else. So that's the whole reason to distill something down to, something that's pretty easy to digest and in a real, plain language and illustrations and things like that. So people can get it. And, it doesn't heck, I'm like, for example, I'm not a software developer.
Oh
So
my
it's
gosh.
like,
Yeah.
the thought of trying to understand Python, out the gate is like daunting, but people want to learn more. So, just because it's something that's, pretty common to me doesn't mean that's the case for everybody. And that's the whole point. You're trying to address that need.
And they say if you've truly mastered something, you can explain it simply.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Whoa, that's a good test." I mean, certainly for you two who are like very esoteric subject matter expert, this is like deep into your wheelhouse. I would consider myself like a translator. My job here is to help translate all the wonky words you say into language for normal people, and I learn a lot on this podcast too. But I was like, yeah, that is certain people just swim in this world and they kind of forget that
Yeah.
other like your average person, just meaning kind of like your average knowledge around different topics and areas wouldn't know some of these things. And it was a challenge to kind of it was a good challenge to say, okay, how do we take all of our knowledge and condense it down into a book you can read on a plane in a way that is interesting and compelling and understandable for people. That's a task in
Totally.
itself.
Yeah. Yeah. It took us damn near a year really, to kind of from start to finish, I think, to, get it all done. And it's like a lot of iteration and, we cut a lot of stuff out and, we ruminated a lot on what, in such an expansive topic, what are those fundamental things that we want to cover? And so, I think, all that iteration just, it's like, it's fulsome. There's no fluff. That's for sure.
No fluff. That was our deal
no
too.
fluff at all. That was kind of tangibly talked about.
It's none of our styles either. Like none of us are
No.
fluff people. We're just like to the point, like very direct. To the point.
No.
I do like one of my favorite parts about writing the book was the personal stories. So we have little call out boxes with stories from each of our perspectives. And we again, condense those down from, they're not pages and pages and pages of our story, but just coming up with the bank of those. And we selected a few, but just coming up with those oh yeah, that was my first board meeting, or that was my first time doing that piece, or oh, that's when the founder got in trouble.
It's almost like we might need to come out with like a second edition or something before too long, because even all of us individually have continued to go through these,
seriously
kind of scenarios in our own, kind of work life outside of this project. Right. So, and, people have asked me, are you going to write another book? Who knows? But,
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, that's sort of where we talked about the impetus for the podcast, right? Is like, how do we, we got a lot to say. People are going to have more desire to consume elements of these topics within the book and also topical conversations. So, we said, hell, let's just do it until we don't have fun doing it anymore.
Yeah.
So here we are. It's almost been a year of doing this as well, actually. So it's like we've had this year cycle. We're about ready to rock into year 3 here.
Yeah.
So,
and it's cool because we've started to get people following us on LinkedIn and YouTube and leaving comments and asking like actual questions. Like, hey, at
love the
26
engagement.
minutes, you said this. Were you talking about that or this thing over here? And we've been able to kind of.
That's the coolest part, actually.
Yeah. So if you are watching this, and you have a question, like drop it in the comments or ping us on LinkedIn because we're happy to answer.
Always.
Just try to be helpful.
Yeah.
But
can absolutely help tackle it from every angle, and that's really what we're here to do.
Now, one of the things we have talked about, and I think I'm gonna maybe offer to put forward, is running a long-term case study on kind of a live opportunity. And again, I think the two of you are aware that I've started a roll-up strategy on a number of professional services firms.
Very aware.
And I think maybe one of the teasers that I'll throw out there is some discussion that we've had, which we will maybe finalize at the next keg meeting, to see if we might want to utilize that case study and do a quarterly check-in as one of the podcasts to kind of see how that's progressing, because the exit strategy is, open at this point, but one of the key players in that space right now is private equity. And you got to get to a certain size and a certain structure. And, you're in professional services, you generally have one of two choices on exit. It's either you've got a wind down and then you've got a sale to your kind of next layer of partners and professionals that are coming up, or you've got a sale to a competitor or private equity. And, I'm not getting any younger. I think you kind of covered that earlier, Rory. So, my goal is to be able to transition over the next 7 years out of that business.
Yeah.
Do it in a way that makes, kind of makes both financial sense and professional sense and takes care of my employees. So I am now the classic founder in that I've got employees I care about. I want to make sure they're taken care of. I've got a business model that I'm almost building from scratch with its roll up. And, we can, that gives us 25 more.
And
episodes.
you've taken on leverage. So you do have truly all of it.
Oh, yes, I've got leverage. Yep.
But the risk premium is there. So
risk premium is there, or at least I hope I've calculated it correctly and the return is adequate.
It's on the efficient frontier for sure.
Yeah. So again, that's something that I think is a teaser for folks that may be coming, and we can follow that.
Well, I'm into it. So let's do it.
Yeah, I think you just did it. I think you just kicked it off.
I think you did.
We have like the live case study with Ed, and then we've also made some predictions off of our trending topic episode. I think we can check in those down the line to see how those shake out, because that'll be interesting to follow.
Yeah. It's going to be all about AI. This is for the algorithm to pick us up. So AI. I say that halfway, but man, I just never cease to amaze me how much of our economy is propped up on that right now.
Oh yeah,
we are in the midst of just a paradigm shift.
Well, I said it a couple podcasts ago. I'll say it again.
Sure did.
Reminds me a lot of the 2000, the 97 to 2000 internet boom, where a lot of companies didn't make it. And a lot of folks were like, then, the economy really cratered. The only thing that pulled us out was a bunch of stimulus checks and 9/11. But what really is fundamental, and I see the same thing here with AI, is everything will fundamentally change. It's just, we don't know the winners or losers yet. And we don't know what that fundamental change is really going to look like. This is, I have often said that the 2000 years from, the rise of the Roman Empire to, kind of 1900, that 2,000 years had a significant amount of change. We've
Yeah.
seen more change in the last 130 years than we saw in 2,000 years.
Yeah.
And I would argue that we've seen more change in this century, in the 21st century, than we saw, for the last 300 or 400 years, and how people live and work and
Time to be alive.
Yeah, happy to.
Seriously.
I am definitely a glass half full guy.
Yeah.
On all that stuff, and I'm just like, this is just, and it's accelerating.
Yeah, it is.
So, as I had just mentioned, I'm
humans
old,
keep
so
up?
I
That is
can't
the
even
question.
imagine what you young people are going to see.
Yeah. When you say you
You
young
young
people,
people.
you're looking past me. I sure as hell ain't young.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah. It is wild. But I think again, private equity is going to be there. There is so much capital on the sidelines, everybody. It's just not even funny. So when there's disruption and opportunity, that's private equity is going to be much more of a player in the space, AI related strategies than they are today. That's fact. So, and yeah, it'll be very, very interesting to see unfold. Yeah. So I think from our standpoint, we're just going to keep this podcast rolling. I mean, we're having fun doing it. We're still continuing to grow it. People are consuming it, which is great. And I think for the listeners out there, we do want to hear from you. I'd say let's make that a goal for 26 is like more engagement with our audience in that way. And bring more content that's maybe relevant to their own lives. Literally if somebody said, hey, anonymously, I'm a founder. I've been approached by 3 private equity groups that are trying to get me to, sell my business, do a podcast and give us the rundown on the 5 things I should consider when wanting to not get screwed, for example. And we'll go into it. I love those. We like the topical stuff. I mean, we that's good. We'll continue to pull sort of intellectual topics and things like that, just because it's relevant. But the topical stuff's really, I think, where it's really interesting.
I think that's a good call out. So for the listener, seriously, 2026 can be defined by you, because we're very much
100%
with our listeners in the comments. We read each one. So things
We
like,
do, yeah.
if there's something in a previous episode where you're like, I didn't quite get that, could you expand on that or explain it further? Please let us know. We're
We'll
happy
do a
to.
whole damn pod
If,
on it.
like
Yeah.
Rory said, if you have a specific scenario and you're able to share what you can about it, the more specific, context you can share, the more specific answers we can give. But we'd be happy to kind of do a full episode to break down the puts and takes and pros and cons and options of your scenario. We can absolutely do it anonymously if you send it in that way or request that. If you have an article you see that you're like, hey, like this has to do with private
Break
equity.
this
Like
down.
what are the private equity folks have to say? Private equity experience folks. What do the private equity experience podcast folks have to say about that? Shoot it our way on LinkedIn or drop it in the comments and we'll break that one down. And then the other thing we've been thinking about for 2026 is potentially having some guests on. So we have some folks in our back pocket, but if you're like, hey, I'd really like to hear you guys have a conversation with this person, or, oh my gosh, actually my colleague would be a great guest to kind of talk about this, please do let us know. But anything like that, if you're like, please cover this topic that you haven't covered yet, then just reach out to us and let us know.
Yeah, I mean, give us a little bit of grace on who we might be able to bring onto the show. I don't know if we can bring on like Jerome Powell or something here, but we'll do our best to bring somebody on. But
he's going to be out of work here soon, is my understanding. So he might.
He might have some availability actually here pretty soon. Yeah. But no, that would be awesome. I think we just love it. We have fun doing it together. We like to engage with folks on it. That's for sure.
Yeah, very cool. All right. Ed and Rory, so for the outro, I forgot to say that at the beginning. What I think would be good is I'll say like, thanks, Big Rigs. You say thanks, M. Thanks, Sweet Eddie B, or whatever the frick your title is. You go, thanks, M, and then we cut it. Like that can be our thing because it gives, or I can say your names because that'll be name
I like
recognition.
that.
Well, I got a different name today.
What do you have? Hold on.
Bubby.
No. I'm going to go with Sweet Eddie B so they know who I'm talking about.
Sweet Eddie.
Okay.
Love it.
All right. So once we roll
Sweaty B.
All right. So once we roll into 2026, here we go. But thanks, Rory. Thanks, Big Rigs.
Thanks, Em.
Thanks, sweet Eddie B.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.